Hi, this is the Dr. Deborah Show, and this is the show where we talk about bringing peace and calm into your life. And later in the show, we'll be talking about mental health stigma. We're live at KCSB FM Santa Barbara 91.9, and KCSB is a platform for cultural expression and thoughtful discussion, providing a diverse educational forum. And I'm a Santa Barbara-based clinical psychologist, and I specialize in pediatric neuropsychology. And during my clinical training and my current work, I've treated thousands of people, and I want to share my experiences with you. I'm also a UCSB alumni, and I live locally in Santa Barbara, and this show's all about our community and how to create compassionate conversations about our well-being and health. Again, I want to welcome our listeners to the Dr. Deborah Show, and it's wonderful to have you with us. As a reminder, the show is psychoeducational, and it's in the area of neuropsychology and well-being. But remember, it's not meant to replace professional mental health advice or therapy. So if you do believe that you suffer from a particular disorder, please do reach out for professional help. And today on the show, we're talking about mental health and well-being with a focus on a very important topic, world peace, with our very special guest, Rudy Westervelt. Rudy has spent nearly 30 years with the Kroger Company in key positions across the U.S. His consulting company, Power and Learning, helps organizations achieve operational excellence through leadership, training, managing change, and making effective use of all resources. He was also a member of the Rotary Club of Lake Arrowhead Mountain Sunrise, club president, and Rotarian Action Group for Peace. He's currently a member of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace, D5330, and president of Solutions for Peace Foundation Incorporated. His Rotary involvement has been in youth service, leadership training for Rotarians, strategic planning, and efforts to better understand and create peace around the world. Super important topic. And Rudy is a trained mediator and he's also a member of Mediators Beyond Borders International. He also has served as Rotary District 5330 governor in 2015 and 16. And during that year, he convened the Rotary World Peace Conference. That was in 2016. That's a Rotary International Presidential Conference, and we'll talk a little more about Rotary so you can learn about that great organization soon. The conference that he held had nearly 1,800 attendees and over 100 solution-based breakout sessions, and also set the standard for future peace conferences. He was also programs chair for the pre-convention peace conference at the Atlanta Rotary International Convention and advisor to the 6th Rotary International Presidential Peace Conferences for 2017 and 18. And Rudy is the chair of the Rotary World Peace Conference 2020. We'll talk a little bit more about that so we can learn about what movements are happening. And overall, Rudy is passionate about peace, motivating Rotarians and others to join together to create peace in their communities around the world. He believes in one humanity where each person has a right to live in peace. And Rudy holds a BA from Cornell University and a Master's in Science from the University of Connecticut. Welcome to the show, Rudy.
Thank you, Dr. Deborah. Appreciate you allowing me to join you today, and with my wife, Karen, who's sitting next to me. And we're just glad to be with you and have a nice discussion today.
Exactly.
About mental health. Yeah,
it's going to be a great discussion. Wow, we were just talking, and also Rudy's wife, Karen, is going to join us. I don't have a complete bio on her, but if you're interested in learning more, you can go to their website. So she'll be interjecting as well. So welcome, Karen, as well.
Thank you.
So here's what's going to come up next. I'm just going to talk a little bit about mental health stigma, and then we'll talk about mental health and world peace and prevention awareness through world peace. And we're talking about mental health stigma today because mental health is the largest public health priority. It's also the largest financial burden of any health issue in the world. And that's according to the World Health Organization and, the World Economic Forum. There's also a very big report the Centers for Disease Control wrote. It's called Attitudes Toward Mental Illness, and it found that stigma and embarrassment are two of the top reasons why people with mental health issues do not seek help. I also just like to reinforce that issues surrounding mental health affect people from all walks of life. None of us are immune to mental health issues. I even like the way they were talking about it recently. Some therapists were saying we kind of get emotional flus, or things going on, sicknesses during the week. So, some days are better than others. And just before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to HopeNet of Carpinteria because we're sponsoring, I'm on the board of HopeNet of Carpinteria. They're a suicide and prevention and awareness group. And we're sponsoring a free candlelight vigil in recognition of World Suicide Prevention Day. And that will be Tuesday, September 10th. I'll say this at the end as well, 7 to 8 p.m. at the CL Fountain, 850 Linden Avenue in Carpinteria. And we'll be honoring the memory of those who have committed suicide, survivors, and those impacted by suicide. So please come and join us. It's welcome, it's open to everyone, and it's a great group of people. We'll be having First District Supervisor Doss Williams, Fred Shaw, our Mayor of Carpinteria City Council members, and Pacific Pride Foundation will be there, and some other speakers. So it'll be great. Okay, and then back to mental health and world peace. I just like to also just say briefly what I would describe mental health to be. I think of it as like a physiological balance where your nervous system and your thoughts and your heart are kind of moving at a nice rhythm, and that gives us a sense of inner peace. I was wondering, Rudy, how would you describe mental health?
That's an interesting question, and I think it's a fine balance between different times. Each of us have some type of stress.
Yes.
We get down about things. It could be at the holiday time. It could be with something that happened at work. It could be between friends or a spouse that would bother you or cause you to be depressed about something.
Yes.
And we need to have, at the same time, a way to help ourselves get back to a centered position.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether that's meditation, whether it's taking a walk, running around the block, talking to somebody, picking up the phone and having a nice conversation.
Yeah.
There are ways to put your mental health into balance where you can control those things. There are going to be ups and downs in life, but it's how we control those and work through those. That's the important thing.
That's so true. I like what you said. You said you need to center. You used a word there. I can't remember exactly. It's about centering yourself. I was just curious because I know that's a wonderful description. How do you think people can become more aware of when they need to become more centered? Like, how do you? I don't know if you.
I think it can be making sure that with your friends and family, people you communicate with, let them know that if you're coming across in a way that wouldn't be normal with them, it's okay for them to let you know, and so you could have a discussion about it and get yourself back centered. And sometimes it's are you being productive could be in your schoolwork. It could be in your workplace. If you're not being productive, something might be holding you back that's eating at you inside. You need to be able to relieve that.
So kind of when you feel held back or you're saying, I love that idea, like your friends and the people around you, which is why it's so important, I think, to have a support system, kind of like establishing with them that it's okay to let them give you feedback.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we're here talking. Karen, do you have another idea about mental health?
I think nervousness, in addition to depression, is important to look at why you're feeling nervous.
That's it. When you say nervous, you mean like irritable or sweating or
uncomfortable,
yeah,
afraid to speak up.
Yes. Okay, those are good. Yeah, those are good indicators. It's kind of like a cue to yourself. If you feel afraid to speak up, if you feel irritable or restless is kind of what you're saying. I like that. When we're here talking about global peace, world peace, and I actually have this minor I was just telling Karen and Rudy that's in global peace and security, and now at UCSB we have a global studies major. So I was looking up actually just kind of their definition, then maybe you could share yours too, about global studies because it's such an emerging field that's concerned with understanding the historical and contemporary phenomenon of globalization, all its aspects. And I think what they're focusing on more is how to promote critical reflection on how the world works as an interlinked, interactive set of processes and relationships that operate across broad spheres of experience from social to political, economic to cultural, religious to environmental, legal to technological, scientific to subjective. There's a lot of different areas. And I know you have a focus because we were talking a little bit about your focus with Rotary and World Peace. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
I think so.
Thank you.
In Rotary, among other things, we have 6 areas of focus, one of those being peace building and conflict resolution.
Yes.
But we also have maternal and children's health and disease prevention and treatment as part of that too. So mental health would fit into these categories. But under the peace building side, we have 6 fully funded peace centers around the world, and we send 100 students every year. 5 of those are for a 2-year master's program, a full ride in peace and conflict resolution.
Nice.
And one in Thailand is a 6-month certificate program. We're about to add the 7th in Uganda.
Cool.
And we will be adding another one in the Middle East and one in Central or South
Nice.
America.
So you're really getting out there.
We're into that. Plus, we also help with students getting other scholarships to go after master's or PhD programs in this field of study.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you're a student, there's opportunities too if you're interested in talking further to Rudy and Karen. But it's a burgeoning field is what I guess you're saying, right?
Absolutely. We have over 1,200 graduates now around the world doing tremendous work in nonprofits and government at the United Nations, a variety of peace-building organizations. And they're also being now tied down with another organization that we've partnered with, the Institute for Economics and Peace, which is a think tank out of Australia. And that they do their work with a set of statistics that once a year they pull numbers and characteristics in all countries around the world and rate those countries on a global peace index. And so it looks at a variety of things, including how much we spend on police and security and
Which is quite a lot.
and the war machine and a variety of other things out there, but also how many people we have incarcerated. And we know that in the United States that is a situation that's we need to get our hands on because 20% of the world's incarcerated population are in the United States and our prisons and jails.
Wow.
And so we have a lot of work to do here.
Are you studying how other countries resolve that with prison, like too many people being in prison here? Do they have remedies or ways they've gone about resolving that?
Well, we will be connecting. In Rotary, we're in every country and territory around the world, actually more than are in the United Nations. In fact, with the 75th anniversary of the United Nations coming up, 50 Rotarians got together up in San Francisco and helped write the charter for the United Nations. And we have a permanent office at the United Nations.
Yeah.
And so
nice.
We have a direct connection there. So we have connection to countries that are solving these problems to be able to bring in solutions to these.
I feel like the United Nations is it's such an important center kind of for all the countries. Because the way I was always taught, isn't there 189 countries? Is that right? Or is
Pretty
it changed?
close to that.
I just remember when I was doing that degree, it was something like that. And, it kind of seemed like, wow, I kept thinking if the United Nations, really oversaw a lot of this. What do you think about that idea?
I think it would be a good idea. There's certainly pushback, especially from the Security Council.
Yes.
With those countries, as in the United States and some other countries that are part of that, that don't wholly buy into that program. But I think there's certain aspects of it that we could work on more strongly together, whether that's on the refugee side or some of the health sides, the World Bank certainly. There's a variety of things, these silos that are organizations that are part of the United Nations that are strong and are working together that we can agree on. In fact, UNICEF is one of those, which has helped us. One of the big things we're doing is eradicate polio in the world, and we're down to 2 countries left, Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for the terrorism there, we would have already finished the job. But we're very close to completing the job, and it'll only be the second time in human history that a disease will have wiped off the planet. This will be after smallpox.
That's why my dad, I was telling you, he's an infectious disease doctor. He said that the vaccines, I think they're considered the biggest medical discovery, I think, of the century. Well, does the Rotary look at terrorism and things like that too, or no?
They look at, Rotary doesn't specifically, but with Institute for Economics and Peace,
yes,
they evaluate that as part of that. So on the flip side of that, they also have a positive peace index. And so we're working on putting into communities that 8 pillars that they look at to create peace.
What are the 8 pillars?
Okay, I don't know if I have them all memorized,
in
but
general,
certainly
maybe.
one of them are the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN.
Yes.
There's well-being,
Yes.
which is certainly psychological as well as physical and mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Economic development, entrepreneurship. Is there a way to make money and have jobs in your community?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a free and a supportive government? Is there a free press? Are there a variety of things that we would think of as freedoms in the United States?
Right.
And that's why we rate, pretty high on that list from other countries in the world. We have things to work on, as all countries do in the United
It's
States.
kind of true because we get focused on the word negative, but so you're saying there's like a word for positive piece. That it's like an index that you use to measure how those countries or places are achieving that or
Correct,
attaining
that's
that?
right.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
absolutely right. And so then we're looking at how do we put together a plan to actually take it on city by city. We could do that in the United States, or we could do it in another country.
You have that laid out?
We're working with that group now to put that together, yes.
Nice. That's a really
And on the other side, we're also an epidemiologist, I'm sure you'd be interested in, Gary Slutkin, Dr. Gary Slutkin out of Chicago, is taking on violence as a disease. And so how you would take on Ebola crisis, you would take on violence in a city the same way. And he started an organization called Cure Violence, which is looking at that same side with an intervention, and then how do you move forward?
Well, I was reading somewhere that, like, even all the gun violence, I mean, it's so hard to pinpoint one thing, but I think that somewhere I read that domestic violence is one of the big reasons. It's not, I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with mental health, except for in that moment, that person's obviously not well, but just like the rest of us. I mean, and also why in other countries, they're not having that same kind of epidemic. So you have kind of a lot of people just all over the world studying these different areas and then also implementing different procedures and ways to go about getting more world peace.
That's correct. So we have our 1.2 million members and 35,000 Rotary clubs around the world.
Yeah.
Have a great connection. So we're in every sector of society. If we need to work with doctors, and we do in different areas to help, we know how to get the doctors on board with us. If we need to work in the school systems or the government or other nonprofits or other businesses, doctors and lawyers and all different parts of society are members of Rotary, and we have those connections that makes this, I think, uniquely strong globally.
How would if someone's listening and they're a UCSB student, is there a way that they could get involved? Is there a Rotary at UCSB, or where is that in Santa Barbara that they could get involved?
There's probably, if you go to, the easiest way is go online and get an app for your phone, Rotary Club Locator.
Okay.
And you can see where every one of those clubs are in the whole world. And there will be a Rotary Club here in this area right here. And also, I'm not sure if you have on campus something called a Rotaract Club.
Rotaract.
And so we have Rotaract for college students and young adults, which is a service organization that connects you with Rotary clubs so you can work on service projects in your area, which is a great way to look at things.
Like a grassroots kind of movement. Well, and also I was just thinking, because the young leaders, they're our hope too for the future, to teach them all about that and get people started at a young age, because I think it's really crucial. So we're here exploring the relationship between like mental health and world peace. And we're just talking a little bit about the Rotary Club and Rudy's work. And it's very diverse, so I'm excited to hear more. I just like to talk briefly about mental health stigma, because I feel like part of my role and responsibility as a psychologist is to help really dispel stigma. And our colleagues at UCSB Global Studies Department, you could probably have an idea too, Rudy, that you could jump in and say is, I think that, our world is really shaped by globalization and conflict and trade and all these different pieces. And mental health stigma over time has shifted away from it used to be kind of like a reference to a spot or a scar or branding, to now where I think people are looking more, I kind of break it down into social stigma and self-stigma. And social stigma is when attitudes and discriminating behavior are directed toward individuals with mental health problems as a result of a label they may have been given. This happens a lot of times like with media, and that's why I think it's really important to have, import accurate information from reliable studies, so we cannot be comparing ourselves in a social way to inaccurate information. And then self-stigma is when the mental health sufferer, the person who has a mental health issue going on, internalizes that the discrimination. And that's very, very common. I find that, people, because we're taught, kind of to have this kind of perfect shell of ourselves, that when then we're taught maybe that if somebody's a little bit different or acting different, that we don't want to feel that way. And then when we have it ourselves, then we turn it against ourselves. So I'm always trying to teach people just, how to take care of our mental health by being able to discuss our emotions, thoughts, and feelings. And that's why we're doing the show, so we can have compassionate conversations. So if you're with other people, it's a really nice way because you learn from each other, and then also you kind of keep that moving. I was wondering, Rudy, from your experience, how do you think mental health and being in business or working in Rotary, in these different areas, how do you think they intersect?
Well, I think I'll try to connect the dots here a little bit. From my work time with Kroger in my 30 years, nearly 30 years there, in some leadership roles. I recall one day where I had a supervisor that reported to me, and it seemed to me that he wasn't acting right.
Yeah.
And we got him help, but not in time. And
is that the person you were talking about before the show? No, that was somebody else. That was a different person.
So he was obviously going through some depression.
Yeah.
We got him some mental health care, but again, it wasn't enough, and it was too late. And he took his own life. And that memory lives with me. It still lives with me today.
It's
very strongly.
Yeah.
What could I have done? Could I have noticed it more? So I have some responsibility in my own self with that.
It's very
and so I
common
took
reaction.
that on as I went through my manufacturing plants. I walked the plants and my and distribution centers every day. And I tried to talk to all my employees, and we ran 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. So I could see them coming on if I got there early in the morning, one shift leaving. Well, I talked to each of them to see if I noticed anything out of ordinary.
Yeah, that's smart.
And because for their own safety and the safety of everybody that worked around them,
Right.
I needed to know they were all right, and it was okay to say, no, something's wrong. Because I'd like to get to know their family and how many kids they had and what was going on in their
Beautiful.
life. So I had a better understanding of who those folks are that work with me and were responsible every day. And so that same intersection goes over, and I'm right now, as you mentioned, the chair of this Rotary World Peace Conference.
Yes.
That's coming up in January. And we're going to have over 150 speakers with solutions to major issues, and many of those are mental health type issues. For instance, I think I mentioned to you earlier, a woman, Kim Helinski, from the Redlands area, whose son was the star quarterback for high school and got drafted by Washington State University.
Yeah.
Was really like the comeback kid up there, saved him on a big game, and was top in his performance. Everybody was cheering him on to be better, to be better, be better. And he came to practice one morning and didn't show up in the afternoon and took his own life. And for his mom to not just let that go, started a foundation in his name. And they now are working with NCAA at all the colleges and universities across the United States to help get mental health care for student athletes. Because sometimes those folks that put the most pressure on themselves to perform at the top level are the most vulnerable, even though we might not think that that's possible.
That's so true. Even I saw this commercial, even though I don't have really TV, but it was Michael Phelps and the gold medalist for swimming, and I like what he said. He said, "I go to therapy. It's okay. I need mental health help too, to diffuse that." But yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure to be perfect and to keep everything kind of in order.
Right, and I still think there is a big stigma around it.
Oh, for
that
sure.
Today, even in the workplace, if you tell somebody, you got depression or something's wrong, they begin to think that, well, maybe you can't perform your job. Well, put somebody else in your place.
Oh, it's so true. Even in my practice, I mean, I hear that just even it could be a card game you're a part of. And then all of a sudden, if you just have a physical ailment or you are down for a couple weeks, going through something, they're just like, oh, just, it's okay. Just, you could do your thing. It's kind of like, we alienate each other.
Right.
But yeah, I think that that's also denial of ourself and rejecting ourself too, because then we're not being honest with ourselves about that. And I always like to just diffuse the idea about suicide, because I think what you said are a couple important things. I think that's very common after we lose someone, to really feel like, oh my gosh, what could I have done? Is there something I should have said? I must have missed that. You start questioning yourself. But I'm sure it sounds like you really were in tune with your workers, going around and checking with them and, making who their families were and seeing if they look different. That's a great way to assess them too, to see if they seem behaviorally different. And I also think, having suicidal thoughts, actually, people, it doesn't mean that they're going to do that. They're going to follow through. But I think everyone at some point in their life kind of feels like, oh my gosh, I don't know how much more I can take. It doesn't mean you're going to act on it. But I think it's important, like you said earlier, to talk to other people and get support.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was working with a group of, I had a small group of kids that I was working with, high school kids, and one of the kids, we were talking about suicide, and one of the kids said that he had considered it, and he was about to commit suicide, and he called a friend, and the friend said, "Don't do it, Matt.
Yeah, and he saved him.
I care about you. I would miss you." And it was just that one phone call that kept him from doing it.
It's so true. And, even if you don't have the right words to say, I like your idea of like opening that door to your friends and saying, hey, if you notice something different about me, let me know. I do have my friends too. And at the same time, I think, what you're talking about is there's this person who has these suicidal feelings, and then just having someone to just listen to him, is really, really key. They've done studies. They found that I think 95 or 99% of people that have attempted would just not ever do that again, So it's...
And I think it ties in with some of the violence we're seeing in school systems.
For sure.
I think that, in fact, we've been doing some discussions in our own local school system, and they're now getting some counselors, mental health counselors in the school system.
Oh, yeah.
So that if a student is not feeling quite right today, they're okay to go down confidentially and go
I
to
noticed
that
more
counselor.
kids doing that.
And or let's say my friend is not acting quite right today, and I don't want to turn in my buddy here, but he needs some help. Don't want him to hurt himself or somebody else.
Yeah.
Is there a safe place to go where somebody can talk to them that's a professional that can help deal with these situations?
Well, I know locally we have like a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have the access line, which is like through Santa Barbara County Health. I usually always give that at the end. But, if you are listening and you need help, you can call that. It's 1-888-868-1649. I think I have that memorized because when I worked there. But it's true. You have to kind of reach out. But it's so hard because people get very isolated, and then they don't reach out. So the phone calls and connection are important. And I think it's really key to find people to support you, on even if you just have one person, if you're listening, to have one person that you can really trust and talk to and get that help.
I also we had something very sad that happened in our family.
Yes.
We have a 10-year-old grandson, and the 10-year-old grandson's stepfather, was on top of him. And our daughter came home and heard this. She went up, kicked the guy out, the stepfather, and the boy attempted suicide.
Very common when people have been, was he sexually assaulting him or physically assaulting him?
Physically assaulting
But that's
him.
actually quite common, when people have been attacked like that. To feel that, I guess I kind of feel like in some ways that's an appropriate response when you feel so hurt. But at the same time, did you talk to him about that, and how did you deal with it?
They live on the other side of the country, so we don't have as much contact as we would like.
But that impacted your life.
It did.
Yeah.
But he's getting counseling.
Exactly.
Still getting counseling.
Yeah, and you know what? There's no shame in going and seeing a therapist. Actually, I think of therapy as like an investment in yourself. It's a gift. I enjoy going, and actually, I think once you get used to going too, it can feel nice. If you have a nice relationship with that person, and that's the point. Like Karen's saying, is that we all have somebody we know and care about, that has been affected by, either violence or mental health issues. So, I think that's why compassion is so important.
We think today about some mental health around post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD.
Yep.
And we think that that's just veterans.
Right.
And it's not.
No.
And certainly we have a lot of veterans going through that, reliving those experiences. But the same is happening with our children who have gone through child abuse, or they've viewed abuse between their parents.
Right.
Spousal abuse, they're suffering their own form of that, or they listen to gunshots all night long, or they see something that's traumatic, or even could be a variety of reasons cause trauma. But there are solutions to those, and
Absolutely.
and there are good trauma therapists that can help deal with that problem.
Yeah, no, that's kind of my specialty. I mean, I think the key with trauma, too, is you have to remember it's cumulative. Like, people think, oh, it's just this one incident that just kind of catapulted me into this other place. But really, it's cumulative, and most people don't notice. You know, they might have something small happen that's stressful or traumatic, and they kind of blow it off. And then I call it the compounding theory of stress. And then what happens is, I call it the kicker, kind of kicks the person, you know, accumulates until your nervous system really cannot tolerate that. Mm-hmm. And everybody's wired a little bit differently. Have you heard of epigenetics? Because you brought up domestic violence, and actually somehow this comes up on the show quite often, is epigenetics is like, for example, with domestic violence, we used to think that just by witnessing that, you know, being exposed to domestic violence, that we would just, recreate that and carry that from generation to generation. But we now know that actually gets hardwired in our DNA. Now, what's the beauty is you can unembed that, through some work like therapy and corrective emotional experience, and change your DNA. So, it's important.
Those things, those are traumatic things. And we deal with some other things, such as taking on sex trafficking.
Yes.
Internationally, but here also locally. And right now our kids are even more vulnerable with online gaming, which is tricked some of them into doing some things that cause them to get taken into the sex trade.
Can you talk more about that? Because I've heard that, too, from parents that are concerned, and they say, oh, my son or daughter's on the internet and they're playing some video game, and then the parent's like, I don't know, how does that happen? And what are the signs to look for if you have kids? Or
we have an expert on it, Opal Singleton, over in Riverside.
Oh, yeah.
And if you know Opal.
I've heard of Opal,
Opal trains a variety of people over there in what to look for, but she also trains the police officers, sheriff's departments. She's called on with Homeland Security, a variety of people looking at how to deal with this. But her newest thing is looking at the internet, really understanding what that is out there, and the internet games and the new chat areas like TikTok, I think, is one of them over in from China. There's some of these other ones that cause to go on. But what you should do, I know we often are using the smartphone. I call it a stupid phone, but it's we're stuck to them. I see everybody buried their face in them.
It's true.
But we need to know what our children are doing, and if they don't feel comfortable with something that's happening, to let their parents know.
For sure.
And we had, she speaks to the students or kids getting on this, playing a game with somebody. They think there's if they're 5 years old, they're 5 years old on the other side, or 10
right,
and 10.
Right, I was talking
and
to
it could
my
be an
first
adult on the other end.
Yeah.
That's asking them all of a sudden, take a picture of yourself. And then they take the photo. They have their photo now, and they can put that on anybody, on any face, and any level of undress, and start telling them that they know where they live now. Since they send a picture, they have a ping off their phone. They can track them.
Scary.
And they can threaten their family and a variety of things.
Serious.
So it's a very serious crime.
Do the people that do that, I mean, I know I've heard of that, and then, I mean, I guess, does the person have their name that they're like the same age, or is their voice sound the same age, or how do they deal with that?
I'm not exactly sure on that. I know that recently we were at a Rotary meeting in Marietta, and the superintendent of schools said that happened to her daughter, was online, and she came running down and said, there's something here that's not right. And she got a hold of the FBI and the police department, and so they went after the guy. But it does happen, and we need to be prepared for it, because it is a very terrible, terrible thing going on.
It is. Well, and I think, there's other people besides just kids, right? There's a lot of actually young adults that play video games. Do you think that they're at risk as well, like college-age students?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You never know who's on the other end of that line.
It's so true. I watched 60 Minutes on, it was like how the FBI, I think, how they created this girl she looks very real, and she talks and everything, but it's just from here up. And they caught like thousands of sex traffickers with that, because they do these video chats and they can find the person. I thought that was really powerful.
Well, today, with artificial intelligence, you can steal somebody's voice and put it on a different face.
It's true.
It's...
you have to think out of the box, like especially when you teach your kids or your loved ones, that it's not as straightforward as it might seem.
Right.
Right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so and certainly there's trauma with sex trafficking too, and there are solutions to that. So there is counseling to deal with that side.
Yeah.
But then also a lot of work that has to be done yet. And in the mental health side, and you have to be careful on what's going to trigger an episode for the person that had gone through that, from that, and help work on reducing the cause of the trigger.
Oh, yeah, it's very serious. I had actually 2 young girls that came up from Newport Beach. They're in a movie on Netflix, and they both were sexually assaulted. One was molested by a family that they used to get dropped off, and the other one was gang raped. And actually, in the movie, the other person that they had interviewed, she actually ends up committing suicide. So it's a very heavy movie, but it's a real epidemic, you know what I mean, of people having assaults and abuses and then feeling suicidal. So don't deny that. You know, if you have something going on, it's true, you're not alone, you know, and there is help. So.
Exactly. We are actually on a board on an organization, Plan It Life. And they were group homes. Now they're, I don't remember the exact name now, but the one of the woman that's the co-president of it is a trauma therapist, and
trauma is a big hot topic.
It is a hot topic, yeah. So in their homes now, with the group homes, they have 4 group homes. 2 are for young men, 2 are for young women, and these are homes where this is the last stop in the foster care system. They couldn't make it in one or more foster homes. Yeah. They've been in and out of juvenile detention. Yep. And they're working hard to save these kids. So it's nice. Really working with them on trauma therapy, showing them that they have value again, teaching them life skills and a variety of things along these lines. And one of the young women in there had been trafficked, and something caused it to trigger a reaction from her that became almost violent. Yeah. From that scenario. So those are a lot of things that are dealt with out there. And what are our children going through as they bounce from one family to the next family to the next family?
Oh, it's so hard.
It's definitely hard on a generation.
Oh, yeah. I used to actually, one of my jobs when I worked at the county was I did all the out-of-county foster placement. So anybody who's a foster child, they get assigned a number for that county, and they're always a beneficiary of that county. So I think our county's like 34 or something. And then what I would do is coordinate care for them. So because they would move them around, and I'd make sure they had a place to live, and they had their prescriptions, and you know they had a doctor to go see and counseling and whatnot. But yeah, it's a critical part. I just wonder why we've overlooked that for so long. But it seems that people and you're out and about, so you seem like you're optimistic that people are catching on and realizing, you know, how to eliminate these really destructive, horrible things and then work on positive peace.
Exactly, and I think, you know, for students out there listening, that's not a bad area to take up in the healthcare system is the therapy side.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a great career. We all need your help, so study hard and go into that side.
Yeah, actually, I had Hannah Beth Jackson, the senator, on, and she said, you know, we are having in California, we have a shortage of mental health workers, which in Santa Barbara we don't. We're really lucky, but I do agree with you. Actually, I think it's a great career too. I love I think we all have the healer within us, so I love helping other people. And, you know, you learn about yourself and how to, you know, like you're talking about, get support from people that, you know, are nice, healthy people.
Can we talk a little bit about the international side?
Sure.
On the international side, if you think about trauma, if you look at, we have 60 million refugees around the world right now. And, for instance, in Syria, amount of refugees coming out of there, I think it's 12 million just in Syria alone. A third of the population now in Lebanon are refugees, and half of those are children.
Yes.
And so there are children in these regions who have never seen peace in their entire life.
I know.
So you think they have PTSD?
Absolutely.
Do you think they're going through trauma? Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
And so we need to think about, take a serious look at refugees and the children, how they're being treated, what we need to do to support them, more than necessarily giving them a blanket and a pillow and some food in their stomach, which is important.
Yeah.
But there are other important things that we need to provide assistance to that we don't currently. And whether that's in our own country or whether it's internationally, we need to be aware of those things and be able to provide the support for them. And another one is we work closely with Rotary with the Peace Corps. They're one of our partners. And the Peace Corps members have been working hard, and they're kind of planted the seeds over there that cause peace between now Eritrea and Ethiopia for the first time in many, many years, that they have peace between the two. But over there, many of the soldiers were child soldiers.
Yeah.
And they were trained at a very young age to not value life and to
Right.
kill.
I was watching a show on that. Yeah.
And so there's a whole nother side of mental health care that has to be, how do you recondition them to be normal human beings and not blindly think life has no value?
It's true.
To be able to turn that around. So there's several things that happen because of war and conflict in regions that we need to help work with on the mental health side that are certainly needed around the world in many countries. In many
Right. I mean, there
countries around
should
the
be
world.
like I feel like there should be a universal just understanding. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be very simple about trauma and mental health. I mean, and I do believe that those kids could recover because 75% of our personalities develop by the time we're 3. So maybe even prior to that. But then, they probably are exposed even in utero, right? And that's very stressful. And it all relates to kind of our nervous system, which is what I did a lot of my research on. It's called dynamic regulation, how we regulate ourselves when we encounter, right, external stimuli, people's, places, sounds that trigger us. So a lot of those kids, right, they get very sensitive to sounds, to movements, anything, and they don't know how to tolerate that because their nervous system is just, the threshold is so low. But that's why I do like mindfulness meditation because scientifically that's been very proven too. And with neuropsychology, you can rewire your system, and if you rewire your brain, that affects your nervous system. And it's a constant process, but I think that's the scar, but we all have different scars too. That we have to overcome. It's just that we don't have tools. And those kids, right, they probably are very limited. It sounds like the kids that are children soldiers, right, is what you're talking about.
So there are certainly organizations that would like to help and probably are helping, but they need much more support than they currently get.
Yeah, actually, on my board exams, I remember they were talking about, like, if you had two if you had opposing gangs, how would you get those two gangs? What would be the best way to get them to get along? And, would you have them talk to each other? Would you make an agreement with each other? And actually the best outcome, supposedly, is to have them work on a mutual project together, that has the same determination, the same outcome.
We worked with a group that did that, not on purpose.
Yeah.
But they were, one of their projects was to paint on a wall that had been used for graffiti before. And they had 2 opposing gang members working next to each other, and it started
And that worked?
Yeah.
Nice. And then do you keep in contact with those people or no?
I wish I could say yes, but no.
But I love that idea. I mean, I was just thinking, I wonder if that's where it even came from, the concept of really working together. And
I heard, I think it was up in Chicago, there were 2 opposing gang members across the street from each other, and young men, and they, one of them said, I need to find out why we're fighting each other.
Sometimes they don't even know. Well,
Yeah.
and also it's so hard because once you get jumped into a gang, that was when I wasn't even an intern, I was a trainee, and I worked here at El Puente High School with gang members that were teen moms. I help them with where their room and all. But it's scary for them, and a lot of them don't have family too, or that becomes their family.
Right.
So it's confusing.
Yeah. So one put down his weapons and walked across the street.
Yeah.
And asked if they knew why they were fighting and killing each other.
Yeah.
Said no, don't really. We've always been told to hate each other, and
Nice.
so and that is the same happening between different countries and different.
You mean they're having that revelation?
Yeah,
that
I think they're
discussion?
revelation. So they had revelation. They came together and they actually put together a park. They cleaned up the park, and now the parents are bringing their kids out in the park and they're playing together. And so
Nice.
it can happen,
Yes.
but something has to
Shift.
shift.
Well, I think we have to try new things too. It's like you're saying, we get in a habit or we just believe what we hear and then we just kind of live our life that way. But we have to maybe also trust ourselves and learn to connect with other people. Right?
Exactly.
Rudy, do you want to talk about Azim?
So many of these things I'm learning from because we're preparing for this Rotary World Peace Conference that's coming
Right.
up January 17th and 18th.
If you're interested too in learning more about that, there's a link. It's the peaceconference2020.org. But I think Rudy will tell you a little more. There's all sorts of things going on there.
Yeah, one of our speakers is actually from San Diego. And when his son was 20 years old, delivering pizza, was murdered by a 14-year-old for his gang initiation. and the 14-year-old is being raised by his grandfather. He's still in prison 35 years later. But at some point, the father, to be able to heal, went to talk to the grandfather, because the grandfather had lost his grandson in prison, and he'd lost his son murdered. And the two of them came together and now started their own foundation where they go to inner city schools, talking to kids about the choices they make. If they could end up in a body bag or prison the rest of your life, or could you decide to do something different and actually study and learn something, work together, and have a life for yourself.
Right. Well, I think sometimes we just need somebody to believe in us, too, or instigate a conversation about other ideas, because we get so ingrained in that we're not worthwhile, or we don't deserve to have a life, or that's the only way they know how to live. So sounds like you're touching a lot of lives, so I'm really proud of you. Good work. No, it's awesome. I mean, I feel like this is, when people ask me why I'm a psychologist, it's really because I'm a humanitarian. I want to make the world a better place. So it makes me happy there's other people doing other things. And, at whatever age you're at, you can always get involved. There's a lot of different ways to, contribute. I was wondering, Rudy, what do you think your work, in business and Rotary and World Peace taught you about the attitudes people hold toward mental health? Like when you talk to people in those different sections, do you think people are accepting of mental health? Do they want to talk about it? I mean, here in some of those programs, they definitely might.
I think the more we each talk about it, begins to bring down that stigma and the barriers to not talking about it. So we don't need to be afraid of it. We need to step out and talk. That's what I've seen. That when we actually can talk about our feelings and how we feel and connect better as human beings. Certainly there's a great division around in the United States today, but we need to learn how to talk to each other again and carry on a conversation. And please, if you're listening, I love my smartphone because I check my mail, but put it down, put it in your pocket. And if you're sitting next to your friend, don't text each other, speak. And true. Talk, so we're human beings.
There's actually a word for that. It's called fubbing. A young adult taught me. It's like snubbing someone with the phone. But I actually will just say that to someone, too. Like if they're doing that, like if I'm out somewhere, I'll just gently say, I'm right next to you. We can have a discussion together. Yeah, I think people have gotten very engrossed in their devices.
I think so, too. I think it's time to come.
Although my 13-year-old says, well, technology helps us, though, too, to, connect to each other.
Sure.
So there are some benefits. But it's true. It's like everything, kind of what we were talking about at the very beginning, is keeping that kind of pillar of centeredness, I think. Is that what you called it?
Right.
I like that. How do you think a person, who's receiving support from, from, Rotary or a business, owner or like a manager who is supportive of them, how do you think that could help a person through a mental health crisis?
Well, I think it's a great source of connection and contact. And so they can't help you if they don't know that you need help.
Right.
So you have to speak up and talk about it, because each of us doesn't know everything, but we know people that know things. And we have more information inside. And I like to think that I'm probably my biggest asset is being a connector, being able to reach out and talk to people or find people when we need a solution to it in a variety of areas, expertise.
How do you give yourself kind of permission? I mean, I know now it sounds like it's pretty automatic, but if someone's new and they haven't ever done that, how do you kind of get your mind going in that direction to reach out to the other people?
Well, I think for me, it's learning more about the person if they're new. And so bringing them in and see what's really inside their head and what they're all about.
Yeah.
If they're really understand.
Really getting to know somebody.
Exactly. It's more than just performing the task of a job if you go out on a job for a business.
Yes.
It's also that your mind and you're connected with the job, not just doing a process over and over and over and over, but you're actually connecting. Are you open? Are you talking? Are you connecting with your fellow employees, with the leadership there, or your customers, or what is that? How does that fit? And so each of those things are extremely important. And we worked actually with, Karen and I do, with continuation school students at a high school up in Lake Arrowhead.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for 10 years now. We put on a career building class for them. Nice. And the first thing we do is for them to understand that they have value again, because they've been told that they won't make it in life they're no good, they've been kicked around a lot. And so they need to understand they do have value. Maybe they don't come to school because they have to babysit their siblings.
Right. You never
Maybe
know
they're
what's
helping
going on.
maybe a grandparent's raising them, or they need to help grandpa or grandma who's sick at home.
Yeah.
So each of those things have value, and that value can contribute over to your work career, and different things that you do in those, being responsible, taking care of things, taking care of other people. And so each of those things are very important in establishing your resume, in developing your whole career path forward as to how you connect with them.
Yeah.
And one of the first things we do is learn how to shake hands and look the other person in the eye.
Super important.
And every day, at the start of each class, we shake hands with each student in there and make sure they look us straight in the eye. We shake hands. It's a good grip.
Yep.
We introduce themselves to each other, and we do that over and over and practice that.
And what's I kind of can gather, because you have great eye contact. What are you hoping to get going with the kids with that?
That's their value. Their worth is here. If you're looking down, what people think about you if you don't look somebody in the eye? Are you afraid of them? You're scared of them? You're going to insult them? What is it? What message does eye contact give you?
Although some cultures have different, right? Like Japanese, right? They don't look, and also a lot of Latino, they don't like to look.
Well, that might be a cultural thing,
right? But I know what you're inherently saying. I'm kind of playing a little around there, but yeah, it is true. I notice a lot of people, like I played tennis, and at the end of every tennis match, you always shake the person's hand.
Right.
But I notice, a lot of people don't shake each other's hand or give it a nice shake. It's kind of, I hear what you're saying. It's like learning how to build security in yourself and believe in yourself and feel proud of who you are, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we talk about how they, that you might not think it, but you live in a glass house out there. If you're looking for a job in your community,
yeah,
but you don't look people in the eye, or you treat the person at the cash register rudely, or don't hold the door open for somebody.
Yep.
People notice that on the counters. If you do hold the door open,
yep,
and are polite, people notice that too, and it'll be a leg up for you for a job interview, because people notice those things.
Also, when you look at someone in the eye, actually, there's a lot of research, because our eyes don't just see; they're all of our processing goes through our eyes. The predominant portion of our processing goes through our eyes. So it's a very important piece also of just processing information. When we look at someone, we can really take them in and connect too, I think. We just have a couple more minutes. So I was thinking, how do you think, Rudy, Rotary concepts relate? I know you kind of broke down those 7, right? The 7 different kind of areas that Rotary focuses on.
Well, we have six areas of focus. 6 areas of focus.
And then how do you think, do you think those kind of all have an overarching mental health kind of piece to them?
Each lead us to peace. So it's water and sanitation, maternal and children's health, disease prevention, treatment, economic development.
They're kind of all mental health, yeah.
Literacy and education.
Yes.
And peace building and conflict resolution.
So
and they're all tied together to peace. Because if you don't have clean water to drink, you're going to find some water, right?
Exactly.
And so there are ways, how do we not have water wars or conflicts over that? And certainly today with climate change, there are more arid parts of the world and less water in a lot of areas, particularly across Africa right now, that are causing migrations of people, another refugee crisis based on the climate change. And so each of these things get us to peace. If we can't go into a community to do a project on water sanitation because people aren't talking to each other,
right,
then we have to go in there and handle that first with relationship building in those areas to create peace. That allows us to get in there. Fortunately for us, with our polio campaign, eradicating polio around the world, we're respected in basically every country and territory around the world for the work we do.
Nice.
And in fact, our Rotary president, when he goes around, is respected that much in the world that he sees the presidents and the prime ministers and leaders of these nations as he goes around.
Yeah.
And I asked him last year what they tell him when he goes and sees the president of a country, and he says, well, they thank me for the work that Rotary is doing, and they give me a list of additional things for us they need help with. So
there's more work.
In each of the work we do out there creates peace in these communities, because we're going into some areas that need help, and then they see that somebody's willing to help, and it's sustainable projects, so we're there for the long term, not just one time go in and do something and leave. We develop relationships around the world.
Consistency. Yeah, I always tell my patients, I believe in consistency and persistency, because I think if we can maintain some relationship and also persist. And I also was listening to this trauma expert. His name's Stan Tatkin. I love him. And he was talking about trauma and conflict and how I liked what it was just this weekend I was listening. He said, you know, in our businesses, we're very good business people at resolving conflict. If we have a business, and maybe you can speak to this too, right? If we have our own business and we don't stock the product, right, and we have a conflict with that because someone comes and wants to buy it, we usually take care of that as a business owner because we want to keep our business going. But in our personal lives, he was saying, when we have traumatic things happen, we're not very good business people because we don't resolve the conflict, you know, and then we push it aside and it'd be like, you know, if we never restocked our shelves at the store. So I thought that was an interesting analogy about how immediate, too. I think conflict, you know, the sooner we can catch it in the moment, right? Because then it kind of morphs and lingers and becomes other things. It's like you were talking about the gang members who said, I don't even know why we're even fighting with each other, right? It had morphed into something they just ingrained in their mind.
Well, I think that's why handling conflict, these different things, like a disease, that just don't bury it and let the next one build up on top of it and bury that one until it comes to some boiling point,
right?
Where you blow up at somebody,
yeah,
whether it's
that's
shouting
my
or something.
Theory of stress.
Yeah, so then you're building up the stress within you. But it's better to take care of those things as they happen.
Yes.
And a disease is the same way. We can treat something before it becomes an infection.
Yes.
You know, if it becomes an infection, we can try to take care of it before it gets in our whole system. But each keeps getting worse and worse for us and harder to take care of. And so instead of letting something fester, isn't it better to have a sit down and ask somebody for a face-to-face discussion to relieve this conflict that could be between two parties and get better understanding of positions and a little bit of empathy for how people came to this.
I think denial is a big piece of that. You know, people don't want to face themselves. And although now there's a big movement for people, you know, welcome kind of the things about themselves maybe that they want to work on. It's just that I think then we have to have either a person or place or space to put that, you know, because it's painful to know kind of parts of ourselves that we might not like. And then how do we keep moving forward? Yeah. Okay, well, we just have another minute here. I was wondering, Rudy, do you have any other ideas of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest thing I'd like to share for all your listeners is to mark your calendars for the 17th and 18th of January 2020 and join us down in Ontario, California at the Ontario Convention Center. We run out the whole convention center for you, and we're pulling together the Rotary World Peace Conference 2020. We have at the conference about 150 different experts talking about many things here that pertain to solutions. They're all solution providers to child abuse and domestic violence and bullying and cyberbullying and sex trafficking and a variety of areas locally and internationally. And we'll have speakers coming joining us from all over the world, as well as attendees from all over the world. It is open to the public. You can go to peaceconference2020.org. Take a look at our speakers up there. We have over 100 there online already. You'll see the experts coming in, and they're experts in a variety of things, including on nuclear weapons.
Yeah, check it. I did
and
go.
And so we've got a variety of things in there to check out. And click on that register button and register now. And we have special rates for college students to go on there as well.
Okay. Well, Rudy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate all your wisdom.